The girl collapsed beside the well as dawn painted the Texas sky crimson. Her wedding dress, meant for a ceremony she'd fled, hung in tatters around her 14-year-old frame. Dust caked her bare feet. Blood dried on her palms from climbing fence wire in darkness. Sam Morgan found her there, his morning routine shattered by this broken bird at his water pump. He'd seen plenty of suffering in 43 years, but something about her defiant eyes, even in exhaustion, stopped him cold. No questions. He pumped fresh water into a tin cup, set it within reach, then stepped back. She drank desperately, water running down her dirt-streaked face. When he brought biscuits and beans from his kitchen, he turned his back while she ate, preserving what dignity remained. That evening, he prepared the tack room with fresh straw and wool blankets, leaving a coal oil lamp burning low, a promise that darkness wouldn't claim her here. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Morning coffee steamed between them as Emma finally found her voice. "I'm Emma," she whispered, fingers wrapped around the tin cup for warmth. "I'm 14. Sam Morgan nodded slowly, pouring himself another cup from the blue enamel pot. He'd suspected as much from her slight frame, the way she'd flinched at sudden movements. "Sam Morgan, this is my ranch." The words tumbled out then, like water breaking through a dam. Her father had lost everything at the card tables in Fort Worth. Harold McBride, who owned half the county and wanted more, had offered a solution. "He paid my father's debts," Emma said, her voice hollow. "In exchange for me." Sam's jaw tightened, but he kept his movements calm, deliberate. He'd learned that stillness could be a comfort to the frightened. "How long ago?" 3 days. The wedding was supposed to be yesterday." She pulled a folded paper from her dress pocket, smoothing it on the rough wooden table. The marriage contract bore her father's signature, the flourishes of a man who'd signed away his daughter like livestock, but where Emma's name should have been, the line remained blank. "I ran before they could make me sign." Sam studied the document, his weathered fingers tracing the legal language. McBride thought he'd bought a wife, same as he'd buy cattle or land. The rancher stood, moving to his shelf of books, pulling down a leather-bound volume of territorial law his wife had insisted he keep. "McBride's powerful," Emma continued, watching him flip through pages. "He owns the bank, the mill. Half the town owes him money." "I've survived powerful men before," Sam said quietly. He found the passage he sought, territorial law regarding age of consent and marriage contracts. "This paper isn't worth the ink it's written with. You can't be sold, Emma. Not in this territory. Not anywhere." That afternoon, Sam began writing letters, one to Judge Harrison in the territorial capital, another to the federal marshal's office. His steel-nibbed pen scratched across foolscap paper as Emma watched from across the room, learning the shape of resistance. As sunset approached, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. 3 riders, moving fast toward the ranch. Sam stood, checking the road, then relaxed slightly as they turned away at the last moment. But they'd made their point. McBride knew where Emma was. "No one's taking you anywhere," Sam said, returning to his letters. "That's a promise." Jake Coulter arrived 3 days later with 2 riders, their horses' hooves thundering across the packed earth of Sam's ranch yard. They stayed mounted, a calculated show of dominance as Sam emerged from the barn, Emma watching from behind the oilcloth window. "Morgan," Coulter called down, leather creaking as he shifted in his saddle. "Mr. McBride sent me to discuss a situation." "No situation to discuss," Sam replied. Standing firm in the morning sun, his wide shoulders cast a shadow across the porch steps. Coulter's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Now, let's be reasonable. Mr. McBride's a generous man. He understands you've been inconvenienced, housing his property. The girl is not property." Sam's voice carried the kind of quiet that preceded storms. "Well now, that's where you're wrong." Coulter reached into his saddlebag, producing a leather pouch that jingled with gold coins. Mr. McBride's willing to compensate your troubles. $50 in gold, plus forgetting any unpleasantness. Sam walked forward, took the pouch, weighed it in his hand. For a moment, Coulter's smile widened. Then Sam upended the bag, gold coins scattering in the dust. The girl stays. That's final. The foreman's expression darkened. You're making a mistake, Morgan. Your cattle need buyers come fall. Your water rights come up for review next spring. Shame if the territorial office found irregularities in your claims. I've survived lean years before. Have you survived having every merchant in town refuse your business? Every hand refuse to work your land? Coulter gathered his reins. McBride owns this county. Morgan, you'd do well to remember that. From the window, Emma watched Sam stand motionless as the riders departed, dust swirling in their wake. His stillness wasn't defeat, it was the calm of a man who'd chosen his ground. When he finally turned, he found her in the doorway. I'm causing you trouble, she said. Trouble finds its own way, with or without cause. He bent to gather the scattered coins, then handed them to her. Keep these, evidence of what he thinks you're worth versus what you know you are. That evening, Sam pulled down his mother's Bible, its leather cover worn smooth by decades of handling. Pressed flowers fell from between the pages, roses his wife had saved from their daughter's baptism. Can you read? He asked Emma. She shook her head, ashamed. No shame in it. My mother couldn't read until she was 30. He adjusted his horn-rimmed spectacles, opening to Genesis. We'll start at the beginning. Emma leaned forward, following his finger across the page. The coal oil lamp cast golden light over the words as Sam's patient voice gave them sound. In the beginning. As she struggled through the first sentences, something shifted in her chest. These marks on paper held power, the same power Sam had used to write those letters to judges and marshals. The same power McBride had tried to use against her with that contract. Why are you helping me? She asked suddenly. Sam was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing the Bible's edge. My daughter would have been about your age. Fever took her 8 years back. My wife followed from grief a year later. I couldn't save them. He looked up, meeting her eyes. But I can save you. Outside, a coyote howled in the distance. The sound once would have frightened Emma. Now, surrounded by books and lamplight, with Sam's steady presence across the table, it was just another voice in the Texas night. She returned to the page, sounding out the next word, then the next. The lamp burned steady between them as Emma learned her first lesson in both letters and courage, that knowledge was a weapon no man could take away, and that some battles were won not with fists or guns, but with the quiet determination to stand one's ground. By the time they closed the book, the moon had risen full. Sam showed Emma to the tack room, where fresh straw and clean blankets waited. Tomorrow, we go to town, he said. You'll need proper clothes, not that torn wedding dress, and everyone needs to see you're under my protection now. Emma nodded, understanding. Tomorrow, she wouldn't hide. Tomorrow, she would let the whole county see that she had chosen her sanctuary, and it had chosen her in return. The next morning brought new challenges. As Sam hitched the wagon, he noticed fresh horse tracks along his property line. Scouts, watching. McBride was gathering information, planning his next move. But Sam had faced worse odds. He'd buried a family and survived. He'd weathered droughts that killed lesser men's dreams. Ready? He asked Emma as she emerged in her cleaned dress, hair properly pinned. She climbed onto the wagon seat beside him, chin raised. I won't hide from them. Good, Sam replied, releasing the brake. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about moving forward anyway. As they rolled toward town, Emma felt the weight of the coins in her pocket, McBride's 30 pieces of silver, now transformed into evidence of her worth beyond price. She was learning to read, learning to stand, learning that some men's protection came not from ownership but from principle. The road stretched ahead, dusty and uncertain, but for the first time since fleeing her father's house, Emma believed she might actually survive this. More than survive, she might actually win. The general store fell silent as Sam and Emma entered, conversations dying mid-sentence like birds startled into flight. Emma felt every eye tracking their movement down the aisles, the weight of judgment pressing against her shoulders. Sam moved with deliberate calm, selecting flour and coffee as if nothing had changed. "Sorry, Morgan," Pete Henderson said from behind the counter, not meeting Sam's eyes. "That flour's already spoken for. Special order." Sam studied the clearly labeled general stock. "Since when?" "Since this morning." Henderson's fingers drummed nervously on the worn wooden counter. "Same with the coffee. And the sugar. Matter of fact, might be best if you tried the store over in Millerton." Millerton was 30 miles away. The message was clear. Emma stepped forward before Sam could respond. "Then we'll take whatever isn't spoken for." Her voice carried through the store, steady and clear. "Unless every single item has suddenly been claimed." Henderson flushed, glancing toward the back room where Emma knew McBride's men often gathered. "Now, miss, this isn't your concern. Everything about this is my concern." Emma moved to the fabric bolts, running her fingers along a practical brown cotton. "I'll need 3 yards of this, Mr. Henderson, unless it's also mysteriously reserved." The store held its breath. Henderson looked between Emma and Sam, then toward the back room again. Finally, he pulled the bolt down. 3 yards it is. As he measured and cut, Emma felt the atmosphere shift slightly. Mary Patterson, the blacksmith's wife, had been examining buttons near the door. She moved closer, pretending to inspect ribbon. "That's a good sturdy fabric," she said quietly, not quite looking at Emma. "It'll wear well." Before Emma could respond, Mary was gone, the bell above the door chiming her exit. But she'd left something behind on the ribbon display, a small paper package. While Henderson wrapped their meager supplies, Adelaide Palmer entered with perfect timing. The minister's wife moved through the store with practiced grace, her presence commanding respect even from those who might oppose her privately. "Why, Sam Morgan," she said warmly, as if delighted by the coincidence. "And this must be your young ward I've heard about." "Ma'am," Emma said, dipping a small curtsy. Adelaide's eyes were kind but sharp, taking in Emma's worn dress and straight spine. "My dear, you must come for tea tomorrow. I insist. A young lady needs proper society, regardless of circumstances." The invitation was a declaration. Adelaide Palmer had chosen a side. "That's kind of you, Mrs. Palmer," Sam said, understanding the gift being offered. "Nonsense. It's only Christian." Adelaide selected her own supplies with efficiency, then paused at the candy jars. "Mr. Henderson, a 1/4 pound of peppermints, please." As they completed their transactions, Adelaide managed to brush past Emma, pressing the candy into her hand along with something else, a small folded note. "Welcome to our community, dear," she said loudly enough for all to hear. Outside, loading their supplies into the wagon, Emma unfolded the note. "You're not alone, child. Thursday prayer circle, 2 o'clock. Back entrance." "What does it say?" Sam asked. Emma showed him, and his weathered face softened slightly. "Adelaide Palmer's got more steel in her than most men I know. If she's organizing the women, will it help? Can't hurt. McBride might own the men's debts, but he doesn't own their wives' consciences." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them processing the morning's events. Emma clutched the package Mary Patterson had left inside were 6 precious needles and a thimble, tools for making her own clothes. That afternoon, Sam began teaching Emma practical skills alongside her letters. She learned to milk their 2 Jersey cows, her hands cramping at first from the unfamiliar motion. "Steady rhythm," Sam instructed, demonstrating. Like most things in life, it's about patience, not force. The milk rang against the tin pail, foam rising white and rich. Emma found unexpected peace in the routine, the warm flank of the cow against her cheek, the sweet smell of fresh milk. "My daughter loved this chore," Sam said quietly. Said it was like the cows were telling her secrets. "What was her name?" "Rebecca. Becky." His hands stilled for a moment. "She had hair like yours, dark and stubborn, never would stay pinned proper." Emma felt the weight of being compared to a ghost, but also the honor of it. She wasn't replacing Rebecca. She was proving that Sam's protective instinct hadn't died with his family. That evening, they worked on her letters using the McGuffey's reader Sam had saved from his daughter's schooling. Emma struggled with the unfamiliar shapes, her fingers cramping around the slate pencil. The cat sat on the mat. She read slowly, each word a small victory. "Good. Now write it." She copied the letters carefully, tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth in concentration. The slate squeaked under her uncertain pressure. "Why does reading matter so much?" she asked, frustrated by her slow progress. Sam set down his coffee cup, considering. "Because McBride tried to make you sign a paper you couldn't read. Because every law that protects you is written down somewhere. Because when you can read and write, no man can tell you what something says you'll know for yourself." Emma returned to her slate with renewed determination. Outside, evening settled over the ranch, bringing with it the distant sound of horses. Sam rose to check, but the riders passed by without stopping, still watching. "Are you scared?" Emma asked when he returned. "Cautious," he corrected. "Fear makes you stupid. Caution keeps you alive." As they prepared for sleep, Emma retreated to the tack room that had become her sanctuary. Sam had added small touches throughout the week: a proper wash basin, a small mirror, hooks for her clothes. It wasn't much, but it was hers in a way nothing had ever been before. She pulled out the coins McBride had tried to buy her with, weighing them in her palm. $50 in gold, more money than she'd ever held. Enough to run far away. Start over somewhere McBride couldn't reach. The thought tempted her for a moment before she wrapped them carefully in cloth and tucked them away. These coins were evidence now, proof of what men like McBride thought they could buy. From the main house, she heard Sam's nightly routine: checking windows, banking the fire, the scrape of his chair as he settled in to read, the sounds of safety, of home. Emma pulled the wool blanket up to her chin, surrounded by the sweet smell of fresh straw and leather. Tomorrow she would face the town's women at Adelaide Palmer's prayer circle. Tomorrow she would continue learning her letters. Tomorrow she would milk the cows and gather eggs and do all the simple, ordinary things that marked a free life. But tonight, she simply existed in this space between her old life and whatever came next, protected by a man who asked nothing of her except the courage to keep going. The coal oil lamp flickered low, casting dancing shadows on the rough walls. Emma watched them move until sleep finally claimed her, deep and dreamless for the first time since she'd run. The night passed peacefully, marked only by the occasional lowing of cattle and the distant cry of a nighthawk. Sam stayed awake longer, writing more letters by lamplight to other judges, to newspaper editors in the capital, to anyone who might listen. His pen scratched steadily across paper, building Emma's defense one word at a time. 3 riders appeared on the horizon just after dawn, their silhouettes dark against the rising sun. Sam reached for his coffee cup, watching them approach with practiced calm, but as they drew closer, something in their bearing made him relax. These weren't McBride's men. They moved like working cowboys, not hired intimidation. "Morgan," the lead rider called from a respectful distance. "Tom Brennan? These here are the Vasquez brothers, Miguel and Carlos. We heard you might need hands for the fall work." Sam stepped off the porch, evaluating the men. Brennan was older, maybe 60, with the deep-set wrinkles of a lifetime under the Texas sun. The Vasquez brothers were younger, perhaps 30, with the quiet competence of experienced vaqueros. "Can't pay much," Sam said carefully. "And working here might cause you trouble in town." Brennan dismounted, removing his hat. Through the window, Sam saw Emma watching. Brennan must have noticed too, because he directed his next words toward the house. "My granddaughter's about that young lady's age, Mr. Morgan. Lives with her ma up in Dallas." His weathered face hardened. "What McBride's trying to do ain't right. Man's got to stand for something, or he ain't much of a man." Miguel Vasquez spoke up, his English careful but clear. "We work for you, senor. Not for the town, not for McBride." "We know what we're signing up for," Carlos added. "Question is, will you have us?" Sam extended his hand. "Bunkhouse is clean. Meals at sunrise and sunset. Sunday's your own unless we're moving cattle." As the men settled their horses, Emma emerged from the house. She'd sewn her new dress from the brown cotton, the stitches careful if not quite straight. She looked older in it, more settled. "Miss," Brennan said, tipping his hat formally. The gesture carried weight acknowledgment of her as a person worthy of respect, not property to be claimed. That afternoon, Adelaide Palmer arrived in her buggy, but she wasn't alone. 3 other women accompanied her: Dr. Morrison's wife Helen, the schoolteacher Miss Catherine Wells, and surprisingly, Mary Patterson from the blacksmith's family. "We thought we'd have our prayer circle here today," Adelaide announced, as if this were perfectly normal. "The parsonage is being cleaned." Sam understood. They were making a statement, visiting openly rather than skulking in shadows. The women gathered in the main room, their presence transforming the masculine space. Adelaide produced a basket of food: fresh bread, preserves, a pie that smelled of apples and cinnamon. "Now then," Adelaide said once they were settled with tea. "Emma, dear, why don't you tell us your story? All of it." Emma's hands trembled slightly around her cup, but her voice was steady as she began. She told them about her father's debts, the card game where he'd lost everything, McBride's arrival at their shabby rooms in Fort Worth. "Papa had been drinking," she said quietly. "He could barely stand when he signed the paper. McBride said I was lucky, that being his wife would be better than what usually happened to girls whose fathers couldn't pay." Helen Morrison's knuckles went white around her teacup. "How old did he know you were?" he asked. "Papa told him 14. McBride said that was old enough." Catherine Wells, who couldn't have been more than 25 herself, made a sound of disgust. "I've seen him watching my students, the older girls. I've had to be careful." "You're not the first," Mary Patterson said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. "My cousin in Millerton. Her daughter was 15 when McBride started calling. They left in the night, went back east. Lost everything rather than—" She stopped, unable to finish. Adelaide's face was grim. "How many others, do you think? Does it matter?" Helen asked. "One is too many." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared knowledge settling over them. Then Adelaide straightened, her spine steel straight. "We're going to document everything," she declared. "Every incident, every inappropriate interest, every family that's fled rather than submit. Catherine, you'll speak with your teaching colleagues in other towns. Helen, use your husband's medical connections. Mary, the working families trust you talk to them." "What can I do?" Emma asked. Adelaide took her hands. "You've already done it, dear. You ran. You spoke up. You've shown it's possible to say no." That evening, dinner at the ranch was transformed. With 6 men at the table instead of 2, conversation flowed more freely. The Vasquez brothers told stories of cattle drives up to Kansas, while Brennan shared memories of the ranch's history. "This land used to belong to the Comanche," he said, gesturing toward the window. "Your predecessor, Morgan. He made peace with them, traded fair, never broke his word. That's why this ranch survived when others didn't." "Sam's father?" Emma asked. "No relation," Sam clarified. "I bought the place from his widow 8 years back, but I tried to honor what he built." "You have?" Miguel said firmly. The land knows a good steward. After dinner, Emma surprised herself by speaking up. I want to thank you all for being here, for standing with us. Don Brennan leaned back in his chair. Miss Emma, I've worked cattle for 40 years, seen all kinds of men good, bad, and worse. McBride's the worst kind. Uses law and money to do what outlaws do with guns. But the law's on his side, Emma said. He owns the judges. The sheriff? He owns some judges. Sam corrected. Not all. The territorial judge I wrote to. Harrison. He's federal appointed. Can't be bought with local money. When will he come? When he's ready. These things take time. Carlo spoke up, his usually quiet voice firm. Time we have. The fall roundup is coming. McBride needs his cattle moved same as everyone. He pushes too hard. Maybe his herds don't make it to market. No violence, Sam said sharply. No violence, Carlos agreed. But cattle are stupid beasts. They wander, get mixed up, take time to sort out. The men exchanged glances, understanding passing between them. Economic warfare could work both ways. Later, as Emma helped clear dishes, she overheard Brennan talking quietly to Sam on the porch. The men in town, they're not all happy with McBride. He's squeezed them hard over the years. But they're scared. Fear's powerful, Sam acknowledged. So's shame. Saw plenty of it when that girl spoke in the store. You keep protecting her, keep letting her be seen, and that shame's gonna grow. Inside, Emma dried plates with careful attention, processing what she'd heard. She was becoming more than just a runaway, she was becoming a symbol. The thought terrified and emboldened her in equal measure. That night, she found Adelaide's Bible in the pile of supplies the women had left. Inside the front cover was an inscription, for Emma. Your voice is your power. Use it wisely. Use it well. Adelaide Palmer. Beneath it were more notes. In different hands. Stay strong, dear girl. Helen Morrison. You are braver than you know, Catherine Wells. We stand with you. Mary Patterson. Emma traced the words with her finger. These women who barely knew her risking McBride's wrath to offer support. She thought of her mother, dead 3 years now from consumption, who'd never had such supporters, who'd lived and died under her father's control, never speaking above a whisper. I won't be silent, Mama, Emma whispered to the darkness. I promise. Outside, she heard the new ranch hands settling into the bunkhouse, their low voices and occasional laughter carrying on the night air. 6 men now stood between her and McBride's intentions. More importantly, a network of women was mobilizing, gathering evidence, building a case that went beyond one girl's refusal. Sam sat at his table, writing another letter by lamplight, this one to a newspaper editor in Austin, carefully detailing the situation without naming Emma directly. Public opinion might not matter in McBride's controlled county, but it mattered in the capital where territorial appointments were made. The lamp burned low as Emma finally slept, surrounded by more protection than she'd ever known. Not the protection of ownership that McBride offered, but the protection of community choosing to stand for what was right. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. McBride wouldn't accept this growing resistance without response. But tonight, Emma slept peacefully, dreaming not of flight, but of standing firm. Her voice carrying clear and strong across the Texas plains, calling others to courage. The autumn cattle sale should have been routine. Sam's herd was strong, well fed on good grass, bearing his registered brand clear and legal. But as he approached the stockyards with Brennan and the Vasquez brothers, the buyers turned away one by one, studying their ledgers with sudden fascination. Sorry, Morgan, Jack Daniels said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. Already met my quota for the season? Since when do you have quotas? Sam asked evenly. Daniels glanced nervously toward the auction office where McBride's foreman Coulter lounged against the doorframe. "Since this morning, economy's uncertain. Can't overextend." Sam moved to the next buyer, then the next. The same story, different excuses. His cattle stood in the pens, prime beef that would bring top dollar anywhere else, now worthless as stones. "This is illegal," Miguel said quietly, his hand tightening on the fence rail. "No," Sam replied, watching Coulter's satisfied smirk. "It's business. McBride's reminding us that he controls the market." They drove the cattle back to the ranch. A day wasted, winter approaching with no sale to sustain them. Emma watched from the porch as they returned, reading the defeat in their slumped shoulders. That evening, a letter arrived by special courier. The territorial office was reviewing Sam's water rights paperwork that had been settled for 8 years was suddenly under examination for irregularities. Without water rights, the ranch dies. Sam explained to Emma as they sat at the kitchen table. Can't water cattle. Can't irrigate the vegetable garden. McBride's tightening the noose. There must be something we can do. Sam was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. Then he stood, moving to the small trunk he kept beneath his bed. He returned with a daguerreotype in a tarnished frame, a woman and young girl, formally posed but smiling slightly. "Margaret and Rebecca," he said softly. "Taken a month before the fever came." Emma studied the faces frozen in time. Rebecca had Sam's stubborn chin, her mother's delicate features. They looked happy, unaware of what was coming. "The fever came through in September, 8 years back," Sam continued. "Rebecca went first, so fast one day she was laughing. 3 days later—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "Margaret tried to save her. Wouldn't leave her side. Wouldn't let me spell her. After we buried Becky, Margaret just gave up. Stopped eating, stopped talking. I found her by Rebecca's grave on a cold October morning. Heart just stopped. The doctor said, but I knew better. She died of grief." "Sam, I'm so sorry." "I'm not telling you for pity," he interrupted gently. "I'm telling you so you understand. I failed them. I couldn't save my daughter from fever. Couldn't save my wife from grief. But I can save you from McBride. That's why I won't bend, no matter what he takes from me." Emma felt tears burning her eyes. "But you'll lose everything. Already lost everything once. Survived it. Can survive it again." He touched the photograph gently. "They would have liked you. Becky especially, she had your spirit. That refusal to accept what wasn't right." A knock interrupted them. Adelaide Palmer entered without waiting for permission, followed by Mayor Thompson, a surprise that made Sam rise warily. "Sit down, Sam," Thompson said wearily. "I'm not here officially." The mayor looked older than his 50 years, gray threading through hair that had been black just months ago. He accepted the coffee Sam offered, wrapping his hands around the cup like a man seeking warmth. "McBride's called a town meeting," Thompson said. "Tomorrow night. He wants to discuss the situation affecting our community's prosperity." "He means Emma," Adelaide said bluntly. "He means Emma," Thompson confirmed. "He's going to demand the town take official action, censure Sam, possibly attempt to have Emma declared a ward of the court, McBride's court." "You could stop it," Sam said. Thompson laughed bitterly. "With what authority? He owns my house note, my business loans. Half the town council's in the same position. We vote how he says, or we're ruined by morning." "Then why are you here?" Emma asked. Thompson looked at her directly for the first time. "Because I have a daughter. She's 12. And McBride's been asking about her lately. Casual questions, but—" He trailed off, the implication clear. "Dear God." Adelaide breathed. "So I'm here to tell you the meeting's at 7. McBride expects fear to keep everyone in line. But fear's got another face. It's got fathers thinking about their daughters, mothers remembering their own youth. You show up at that meeting. Let Emma speak her truth. And maybe... He stood abruptly. I've said too much. Officially. I was never here. After Thompson left, Adelaide stayed behind. Emma, tomorrow night will be hard. McBride will try to humiliate you, make you seem like a wayward child causing trouble. Are you prepared for that? Emma thought of the women who'd visited, their shared stories, their quiet support. She thought of Sam losing his family, choosing to protect her anyway. She thought of her mother, dying silent and forgotten. I need to speak for myself, she said firmly. Whatever happens, I need to say the words. The next evening, the church that served as the town meeting hall was packed, every seat filled. Men standing along the walls. McBride sat in the front row like a king holding court. Coulter and his men flanked around him. Sam entered with Emma, Brennan and the Vasquez brothers behind them. A murmur ran through the crowd. Adelaide Palmer and her contingent of women were already seated, backs straight, faces composed. Mayor Thompson called the meeting to order with obvious reluctance. Mr. McBride has requested community discussion regarding recent disruptions. McBride rose, his expensive suit impeccable, voice carrying the authority of wealth. Gentlemen and ladies, we have a problem. A contract legally entered has been broken. A young woman is being kept from her lawful guardian, her father who sold her. Adelaide interrupted. Who made arrangements for her security and prosperity? McBride continued smoothly. Now she's living with a single man, unchaperoned, bringing scandal to our community. Emma stood. The room fell silent. I need to speak, she said. You're a child, McBride said dismissively. Children don't speak at town meetings. If I'm old enough to be married, I'm old enough to speak. The logic was unassailable. McBride's jaw tightened, but he couldn't refute it without undermining his own position. Emma moved to the front, her legs trembling but her voice clear. My name is Emma Watson. I'm 14 years old. My father lost everything gambling and sold me to Mr. McBride to pay his debts. I was to be married against my will, to a man older than my grandfather would have been. She pulled out the contract, holding it up. This paper says I'm property to be transferred. But I'm not property. I'm not cattle or land or grain. I'm a person, and I'm too young to be a wife. The last words rang through the church. Several women dabbed at their eyes. Men shifted uncomfortably, some looking at their own daughters scattered through the crowd. She's hysterical, McBride declared. Clearly needs firm guidance. I'm not hysterical. Emma interrupted. I'm frightened. There's a difference. I'm frightened of you, Mr. McBride, of what you tried to make me do, of what you're trying to do to other girls. That's slander, McBride snarled. Is it? Catherine Wells stood. Should I list the names of my students you've inquired about, their ages? Mary Patterson rose. Should I tell about my cousin's daughter? One by one, women began standing by they, not speaking, just standing, their silence more damning than words. McBride's face went red, then purple. This is Conspiracy Thompson. Control your meeting. But Thompson was staring at his own daughter, 12-year-old Sarah, sitting with her mother, the girl who McBride had been asking about. The meeting is controlled, Thompson said quietly. The citizen has the floor. Emma looked across the sea of faces, some sympathetic, some hostile, most simply uncertain. These were people caught between conscience and consequence, fear and faith. I don't want to cause trouble, she said finally. I just want to be free, to grow up at my own pace, make my own choices. Is that so wrong? Is that worth destroying a good man's ranch, ruining his reputation, threatening his livelihood? She returned to her seat. The church buzzed with whispered conversations. McBride stood again, trying to regain control, but the moment had shifted. The seed of doubt Emma had planted was taking root, watered by the tears of mothers remembering their own youth, fertilized by fathers' newfound fear for their daughters. We'll vote, McBride demanded, on whether this disruption should continue. What exactly would we be voting on? Thompson asked. There's no legal motion before us. McBride's eyes narrowed. On whether the town supports contract law and proper moral behavior, or whether we support selling children, Adelaide said clearly. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Voices raised. Arguments erupted. Through it all, Emma sat quietly beside Sam, feeling the tide beginning to turn. Not victory yet, but no longer certain defeat. As they left the church, Brennan walking close behind for protection, Sam spoke quietly. You did well. Took courage to stand up there. It's not over, Emma replied, watching McBride's furious face as he gestured at his men. No, Sam agreed, but something changed tonight. The town's not united behind him anymore. That's a start. The ultimatum arrived at dawn, delivered by Coulter himself with 4 riders as witnesses. Sam read it while Emma watched from the doorway, her hands white-knuckled against the frame. Judge Harlan will arrive tomorrow, Coulter announced with satisfaction. McBride's personal friend from Dallas. He'll review the contract and make a binding decision. The girl can come peacefully now, or be legally compelled tomorrow. Sam folded the paper carefully. We'll see what Judge Harlan decides. Oh, we already know what he'll decide. Coulter's smile was wolf-like. Man owes McBride more than money owes him his position. Tomorrow, this ends. After they left, Emma sank into a chair, the fight draining out of her. He's right. A bought judge will rule however McBride wants. Maybe, Sam said. But I've been writing letters for weeks, not just to local authorities. What good will letters do against a corrupt judge? Sam didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out paper and began writing again to newspaper editors, territorial officials, anyone who might listen. But Emma could read the worry in the set of his shoulders. That afternoon, she made a decision. While Sam was in the barn with Brennan, Emma packed her few belongings into the carpet bag Adelaide had given her. The coins from McBride went in first, then her new dress, the Bible with the women's inscriptions, her slowly improving attempts at writing. She studied the hand-drawn map Sam kept on his wall, tracing possible routes north, Kansas maybe, or Colorado territory. Somewhere McBride's reach couldn't follow. The sun was setting when she slipped out, leaving a note on Sam's table. You've done enough. This is my fight to finish alone. Thank you for showing me I have worth. Emma. She'd barely reached the property line when she heard footsteps behind her. Not running, just walking steady and sure. Sam appeared in the fading light, his expression unreadable. Going somewhere. I can't let you lose everything for me, Emma said, tears coursing down her face. Too many people are suffering because of my choice. Sam sat on a fallen log, patting the space beside him. After a moment, Emma joined him, the carpet bag heavy between them. Let me tell you something about suffering, he said quietly. After Margaret and Rebecca died, I thought about ending it. Had my rifle loaded, barrel in my mouth. You know what stopped me? Emma shook her head. A calf got tangled in wire. Stupid thing was crying, cutting itself worse with every struggle. I put the rifle down to free it. Took an hour. Got kicked twice for my trouble. But when that calf finally ran back to its mother, I realized something. He looked at her directly. Suffering's not the worst thing. Giving up is. But McBride has power. Yes. But power built on fear is like a house on sand. One good storm and it crumbles. He stood, offering his hand. Running won't solve this, Emma. We stand together, or we don't stand at all. They walked back to the ranch in gathering darkness, Emma's resolve strengthening with each step. As they approached the house, they saw lanterns, dozens of them, gathering in the yard. Adelaide Palmer was there with her circle of women, but more surprisingly, Mayor Thompson had come with several townsmen. The schoolteacher Catherine had brought others. Even some of McBride's own ranch hands stood at the edges, looking uncomfortable but present. "What is this?" Sam asked. "A meeting," Adelaide said simply. "The real town meeting, not McBride's puppet show." They gathered in the barn, nearly 40 people in all. Thompson spoke first, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "I've been a coward," he said bluntly. "We all have. Let one man's money turn us into sheep. But seeing Emma stand up at that meeting, hearing her speak truth, it shamed me." "Shame doesn't pay debts," someone called out. "No," Thompson agreed. "But living in shame costs more than money. My Sarah's 12. Your Betty's 13. He pointed to another man. "How long before McBride decides they're old enough?" Helen Morrison stood. "My husband's been documenting injuries. Girls who've come to him over the years. Scared and hurt. He never spoke up because McBride owns the bank that holds our loans. But silence is complicity." One by one, people began sharing stories. McBride's pattern emerged clearly: young girls from families in debt. Pressure applied. Choices eliminated. Emma wasn't the first, just the first to run successfully. "What do we do?" asked James Murphy, the feed store owner. "Judge Harlan arrives tomorrow." "We bear witness," Adelaide said firmly. "All of us. We pack that courthouse, and we watch. Let Harlan rule in front of the whole community, not in some back room." "And if he rules against Emma?" Sam asked. Catherine Wells smiled grimly. "Then we document everything, every word, every detail. And we send it to the territorial capital, to the newspapers, to anyone who'll listen." An unexpected voice spoke from the back. "There's something else." Everyone turned. It was Pete Henderson from the general store, looking miserable but determined. "McBride's been skimming territorial taxes," he said quickly, as if afraid he'd lose his nerve. "Makes me keep 2 sets of books, real ones and official ones. I kept copies, hidden." The barn erupted in whispers. Tax fraud was federal jurisdiction, beyond even McBride's influence. "Would you testify?" Thompson asked. Henderson nodded shakily. "I'm done being afraid. My wife's expecting. What kind of world am I bringing a child into if I don't stand up now?" They talked until midnight, planning and organizing. When people finally began dispersing, Adelaide pulled Emma aside. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won something important. You've shown this town its conscience." Emma wanted to believe her, but fear still gnawed at her stomach. Judge Harlan was arriving in the morning, and McBride had been too quiet since the town meeting. Sam found her on the porch after everyone left, staring at the stars. "Scared?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "Good. Means you understand the stakes. But look what you've done. Emma, 6 weeks ago, these people wouldn't have spoken McBride's name without permission. Now they're planning rebellion." "Because of you," Emma said. "You stood first." "No," Sam corrected. "I just offered shelter. You offered truth. That's much braver." Inside the house, he showed her another letter that had arrived that evening. This one bore an official seal. "Territorial Judge Harrison," Sam read. "He's heard about the case. Can't interfere with local jurisdiction directly, but he's observing with interest. That's political speak for 'I'm watching,' so be careful." Will it matter to Harlan? Maybe not to Harlan, but McBride's not stupid. He knows federal attention is dangerous, especially with Henderson's information about the taxes. Emma studied the letter, tracing the official seal with her finger. "Do you think we have a chance?" "Yesterday I'd have said no. Tonight." Sam gestured toward where the townspeople had gathered. "Tonight I think McBride's about to learn what happens when you push people too far." They sat in comfortable silence, the night sounds of the ranch surrounding them. Cattle lowing, horses shifting in their stalls, the distant howl of a coyote. Normal sounds that had become precious, representing the life Emma had found here. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "for coming after me earlier." You don't run from family, Sam replied simply. And like it or not, that's what you've become. The word family settled around Emma like a warm blanket. Not the family that had sold her, but the family that had chosen her Sam, Adelaide, the ranch hands, even the townspeople who'd finally found their courage. Tomorrow changes everything, she said. Tomorrow changes nothing. Sam corrected. We'll still be who we are, standing for what's right. Whether Harlan rules for us or against us, we don't stop fighting. As Emma prepared for bed, she found a package on her pillow. Inside was a simple cameo brooch with a note from Adelaide. This was my grandmother's. She stood against slavery when it cost her everything. Wear it tomorrow. Remember you come from a long line of brave women, even if not by blood. Emma pinned the brooch to her dress, studying her reflection in the small mirror. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a frightened girl in a torn wedding dress. Tomorrow, she would walk into that courthouse as something else, a symbol of resistance, a voice for the voiceless. Outside, Brennan and the Vasquez brothers kept watch, their presence a comfort. The lamp burned steady in the window, Sam's nightly signal that this remained a place of sanctuary. One more dawn, Emma thought. One more chance to prove that courage could overcome corruption, that truth could triumph over power. The odds were still against them, but for the first time since she'd run from her father's house, Emma believed they might actually win. The night stretched on, heavy with possibility and dread in equal measure, but Emma slept peacefully, her hand touching the cameo brooch, surrounded by the family she'd found and the community she'd awakened. Tomorrow would come with all its dangers, but tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. The courthouse filled before dawn, townspeople arriving in groups of 2 and 3, filling every bench and lining the walls. Emma entered with Sam, wearing her brown dress and Adelaide's cameo brooch, head held high despite the trembling in her hands. The room fell silent as she passed, then whispers rippled in her wake like water disturbed by a stone. McBride sat in the front row, supremely confident, his expensive suit and gold watch chain gleaming in the morning light streaming through tall windows. But Emma noticed something different. Fewer of his men surrounded him. Some had melted away in recent days, unwilling to be associated with what was coming. Judge Harlan entered precisely at 9, but he wasn't alone. Behind him walked another man in judicial robes, younger and sharp-eyed. Harlan's florid face showed confusion and irritation. I present Judge Theodore Harrison of the Territorial Court, the bailiff announced, here to observe proceedings in the matter of Watson versus McBride. McBride half rose from his seat, his composure cracking. This is a local matter. All matters are of interest to the territory, Harrison said mildly, taking a seat to the side. Please proceed. Judge Harlan. I'm merely observing. Harlan's hands shook slightly as he arranged his papers. The bought judge hadn't expected federal scrutiny. He cleared his throat, trying to regain authority. We're here to determine the validity of a marriage contract between Harold Watson and Harold McBride concerning the defendant Emma Watson. I'm not a defendant, Emma said clearly. I haven't been charged with any crime. You're in violation of a legal contract, Harlan began. A contract I never signed. Emma stood, her voice carrying through the packed courtroom. A contract made when I was 14 years old, without my knowledge or consent. Your father had legal authority to sell me. Emma stepped forward, pulling out the contract. Like livestock. Show me where in territorial law it says a father can sell his daughter to pay gambling debts. Adelaide stood. May I present evidence? Your Honor. Harlan glanced nervously at Judge Harrison. This isn't a trial. Then what is it? Harrison asked quietly. If you're making a legal ruling, surely you'll hear evidence. Trapped. Harlan nodded. Adelaide brought forward a stack of documents. Sworn statements, she announced. from 17 families whose daughters were approached by Mr. McBride under similar circumstances, ages ranging from 13 to 16. The courtroom stirred. McBride's face darkened to purple. "That's hearsay," he snarled. "It's a pattern," Adelaide replied calmly, "of using debt to acquire young girls. Tell me, Mr. McBride, how many times have you been married?" "3 times, all legal." "And the ages of your brides?" McBride's jaw clenched. "That's not relevant. First wife, Ellen, age 15. Second wife, Margaret, age 14. Third wife, Anna, age 16. All from families in debt to you. All dead within 5 years of marriage." Gasps echoed through the room. Dr. Morrison stood. "I treated all 3 women," he said, his voice heavy. "I have medical records. May I submit them to the court?" Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Please do." As Morrison detailed his findings, exhaustion, malnutrition, untreated injuries, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from tension to horror. McBride's confident facade crumbled with each revelation. Emma felt the moment arrive, the breath before speaking that would change everything. She stood, moving to the center of the room where everyone could see her. "Your Honor, both your honors, I want to tell you what happened, not the legal parts, but the truth." She began with her father's drinking, the debts that mounted, the night McBride came to their rooms. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, describing the fear, the desperation, the moment she'd decided to run. "He told me I was lucky," she said, looking directly at McBride. "That 14 was old enough to know my duty, that I should be grateful for his interest." Her voice rose. "I am not grateful. I am not property. And I am too young to be a wife." The words rang through the courthouse. Then, one by one, women began standing. Not speaking, just standing in solidarity. First Adelaide and her circle, then others' wives, daughters, grandmothers. Soon half the room was on its feet. Catherine Wells stepped forward. "I'm 24 years old, Your Honor. I teach school 3 times this year. Mr. McBride has inquired about my older students, asked about their home situations, their family's finances. I have his letters." She produced them, each one seemingly innocent but together forming a disturbing pattern. Interest in specific girls, questions about their ages, their father's debts. Mayor Thompson stood next, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "Your Honor, I move that this court recognize Emma Watson as a ward of the state, under protection of law, until she reaches majority." "You have no authority here," McBride erupted. "I have the authority of an elected official," Thompson replied, "and the backing of this community." Pete Henderson emerged from the crowd, carrying a leather satchel. "Your Honors, I have something else." His hands shook as he pulled out ledgers. "Proof of tax fraud. Mr. McBride has been stealing from the territory for years." The courtroom exploded. McBride lunged toward Henderson but was restrained by spectators. Judge Harlan pounded his gavel futilely. "Order, order." Judge Harrison stood, and silence fell immediately. His authority was unmistakable, unbought and unbowable. "Judge Harlan," he said quietly, "I believe you should recuse yourself from this case." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that you owe Mr. McBride $12,000 in personal debts, paid directly to your account in Dallas 3 days ago." Harlan went white. "How did you—" "Federal investigators have many resources," Harrison replied. He turned to the room. "I'm assuming jurisdiction in this matter." McBride tried to leave, but found his path blocked by townsmen, not threatening, just standing firm. "Sit down, Mr. McBride," Harrison commanded. "You'll want to hear this." The judge pulled out his own documents. "I've been investigating you for 6 months. The letters from Mr. Morgan started it. But the evidence went deeper. Tax fraud is just the beginning. He looked at Emma. Miss Watson, please come forward. Emma approached the bench, Sam beside her for support. How old are you? 14, Your Honor. And did you consent to marry Mr. McBride? No, sir. I ran rather than sign the contract. Then this matter is settled. No marriage contract involving a minor is valid without the minor's consent, regardless of parental agreement. He turned to McBride. Furthermore, you're under arrest for tax fraud, conspiracy, and attempted trafficking of a minor. You can't. This is persecution. This is justice, Harrison replied. Long overdue. Federal marshals entered. Harrison hadn't come alone. As they led McBride away, he turned to Emma with pure hatred. This isn't over, girl. Sam stepped forward, placing himself between McBride and Emma. Yes, it is. The courtroom erupted in celebration. Women embraced, men shook hands. Children who'd been kept outside pressed against windows to see. Emma stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal. Adelaide reached her first, wrapping her in a fierce embrace. You did it, dear one. You found your voice and gave voice to others. We all did it, Emma corrected, looking around at faces that had been strangers 6 weeks ago. Now family. Judge Harrison approached. Miss Watson, we need to discuss your future. You're now a ward of the territory. You'll need a legal guardian. I'll stand as guardian, Sam said immediately. As will I, Adelaide added. And I, said Thompson. Soon a dozen voices offered guardianship. Harrison smiled the first warmth he'd shown. I think Mr. Morgan has proven himself admirably. But the final choice is yours. Miss Watson. Emma looked at Sam, the man who'd offered her sanctuary when she was nothing but a stranger in a torn dress, who'd taught her to read, to stand, to fight. Sam, she said simply. I choose Sam. The legal documents were signed there in the courtroom, witnessed by half the town. Emma Watson, ward of Samuel Morgan, under protection of the territory until her 18th birthday. As they prepared to leave, Henderson approached McBride's former foreman, Coulter, who stood abandoned in a corner. You'll need new employment, Henderson said. McBride's assets are frozen. Coulter nodded, defeated. Anywhere that'll have me. I could use honest help at the store. Henderson offered, if you're willing to be honest. It was a small gesture, but significant, the town choosing reconciliation over revenge. Outside the courthouse, Emma stood on the steps, looking over the gathered crowd. These people had risked everything for her, found their courage in her rebellion. Thank you, she called out. All of you. Tom Brennan stepped forward, hat in hand. No, miss. Thank you. You reminded us what we're supposed to be, decent folks who protect those who need protecting. The crowd began dispersing slowly, reluctant to let the moment end. Emma noticed other young girls in the crowd, looking at her with something like awe. She'd become what Adelaide had said, a symbol that saying no was possible. Catherine Wells approached with several of these girls. Emma, would you consider helping at the school? The girls. They need to hear your story from you. I'm still learning to read properly myself, Emma protested. You've learned something more important, Catherine replied. You've learned to speak truth. That's the most valuable lesson you could teach. As Sam's wagon rolled toward home, Emma sat quietly beside him, processing the magnitude of what had happened. McBride was gone, his power broken. The town had found its courage. She had a legal guardian who wanted nothing from her but her safety and happiness. It's not really over, Sam said quietly. McBride has friends, influence in Dallas. There might be appeals, challenges. Then we'll face them, Emma replied. Together. Together, Sam agreed, and the simple word carried the weight of family, community, and chosen bonds that law could recognize but never fully capture. The news of McBride's arrest spread through 3 counties like wildfire across dry prairie grass. Within days, federal investigators descended on his properties, freezing assets and uncovering years of carefully hidden crimes. His empire, built on fear and debt, crumbled as quickly as it had risen. By the end of the week, McBride was transferred to Dallas to await federal trial, his local influence evaporating like morning dew under harsh sunlight. Emma stood at Sam's fence line, watching the sunrise paint the ranch in gold and amber. A year had passed since she'd collapsed by the well, a desperate girl in a torn wedding dress. The woman who stood there now was different still, young at 15, but carrying herself with quiet confidence earned through trial. "Letter for you," Sam called from the porch, holding up an envelope bearing an official seal. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was an acceptance letter from the Territorial Normal School for Teachers, along with a scholarship funded by what was now called the Adelaide Palmer Foundation for Girls' Education. "They accepted me," she whispered, then louder, joy breaking through. "They accepted me." Sam's weathered face creased in a proud smile. "Never doubted it. You've been teaching half the girls in town already." It was true. For the past 8 months, Emma had been working with Catherine Wells at the schoolhouse, helping girls who'd never been allowed to attend school regularly. Some came from families like hers, poor, overlooked, considered less valuable than sons. Emma taught them letters and numbers, but more importantly, she taught them their worth. "The Hendersons are hosting the harvest celebration tonight," Sam reminded her. "Whole town's coming." The harvest celebration had been Adelaide's idea, a new tradition to mark not just the agricultural harvest, but the community's renewal. As evening approached, Emma dressed carefully in a new blue dress she'd sewn herself, pinning Adelaide's cameo at her throat. The woman herself had become like a grandmother to Emma, fierce and protective, channeling her considerable energy into ensuring no girl in the county would ever again face what Emma had faced. The Henderson property glowed with lanterns, tables groaning under the weight of shared food. The entire town had gathered ranchers, farmers, shopkeepers, even some of McBride's former employees who'd found new work and new purpose. Emma noticed Jake Coulter helping Pete Henderson arrange benches, the former foreman transformed into a humble store clerk, working to earn the town's trust day by day. Emma. A group of girls rushed toward her, her students from the informal school. Mary Patterson's daughter, Rachel, the Murphy twins, little Sarah Thompson, who'd grown 2 inches and found her voice in the past year. "Miss Emma, will you really be going away to school?" Rachel asked, worry in her young voice. "Just for the term," Emma assured them. "I'll be back summers to help Miss Catherine. And when I graduate, I'll be a real teacher." Mayor Thompson approached with Judge Harrison, who'd returned for the celebration. The federal judge had become a regular correspondent, checking on Emma's progress and the town's recovery. "Miss Watson," Harrison said warmly, "I hear congratulations are in order." "Thank you, Your Honor. None of this would have been possible without your intervention." "My intervention?" Harrison chuckled. "Young lady, I merely applied the law. You in this community did the real work, standing up, speaking out, refusing to accept injustice." Adelaide joined them, her hair more silver than brown now, but her spine still straight as iron. "Emma will be our first scholarship recipient. By next year, we hope to sponsor 3 more girls." The evening progressed with food and conversation, children playing while adults discussed crops and weather, normal talk that had been impossible under McBride's shadow. As darkness fell, Doc Morrison stood to speak. "Before the dancing starts, I think we should acknowledge something. A year ago, we were a town ruled by fear. We let one man's money turn us into cowards, but one girl's courage reminded us who we ought to be." He raised his glass of apple cider. "To Emma Watson, who taught us that being too young to be a wife doesn't mean being too young to change the world." The toast rang out across the gathering, but Emma stepped forward before the applause died. "Please," she said, her voice carrying clearly, "I didn't do this alone." Sam Morgan stood for me when I was a stranger. Adelaide Palmer organized resistance when it was dangerous. Mayor Thompson found his courage when his daughter needed protection. Pete Henderson risked everything to expose the truth. We all did this together. She looked around at the assembled faces. Some had been strangers a year ago. All were family now. I was too young to be a wife, yes, but I was exactly the right age to learn what community means, what family really is. You gave me shelter, education, and hope. You gave me a future I could choose. The fiddler struck up a tune, and couples began forming for the traditional harvest dance. Tom Brennan approached Emma with old-world courtliness. "Miss Emma, might an old cowhand have this dance?" She accepted graciously, and soon was passed from partner to partner, the Vasquez brothers, Doc Morrison, even shy Pete Henderson. But it was Sam who claimed the last dance, the guardian who'd become a father in all but blood. "Proud of you," he said simply as they moved to the music. "I'm scared," Emma admitted. "Normal school, being away from here." "Being scared is just proof you're doing something that matters," Sam replied. "You'll do fine, and home will be here when you need it." As the evening wound down, Emma found herself at the dessert table with Catherine Wells, who would be taking over Emma's students. "They worship you," Catherine said. "You've shown them possibilities they never imagined. I've shown them what you and Adelaide and all the women here showed me, that we have voices worth hearing." A small hand tugged at Emma's skirt. It was Lucy Morrison, the doctor's youngest daughter, barely 7 years old. "Miss Emma, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you." Emma knelt to Lucy's level. "You already are brave. Every time you ask a question, every time you learn something new, every time you stand up for what's right, that's bravery." As families began departing, Judge Harrison pulled Sam and Emma aside. "McBride's trial is next month. Emma, you'll need to testify." Emma's stomach tightened, but she nodded. "I'll be ready." "He's looking at 20 years, Harrison continued. "The tax fraud alone would be 10, but the attempted trafficking charges. He won't be hurting anyone again." After Harrison left, Sam and Emma rode home in comfortable silence, the wagon wheels creaking rhythmically. The ranch appeared in moonlight, the place that had become Emma's true home. "I have something for you," Sam said. Reaching under the wagon seat, he pulled out a leather-bound journal. "For normal school, to write down your experiences, your thoughts, your story matters. Emma, don't forget to tell it." Inside the front cover, he'd written, "For Emma who found her voice and helped others find theirs, with love and pride, Sam." Emma traced the words, tears blurring her vision. "Thank you for everything." "Thank you," Sam replied, "for giving me purpose again, for reminding me that protecting something precious is worth any risk." The next morning brought a surprise visitor, Emma's father, Harold Watson, looking older and smaller than she remembered. Sam's hand went to his rifle, but Emma stopped him. "Let him speak." Harold stood at the gate, unable to meet his daughter's eyes. "I came to apologize, and to sign these." He held out papers, legal documents permanently severing his parental rights, ensuring Emma's freedom. "Why now?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "I heard what you did, what you've become." His voice broke. "I'm ashamed, Emma. Ashamed of what I tried to make you. Your mother would have hated me for it." "Yes," Emma agreed simply. "She would have." Harold signed the papers with shaking hands, then turned to leave. At the gate, he paused. "I don't expect forgiveness. Just be better than I was. Be better than all of us were." "I intend to," Emma replied. After he left, Emma stood in the yard, feeling the last chains of her old life fall away. She was truly free now, legally, emotionally, completely. That evening, the ranch was quiet. Brennan and the Vasquez brothers had ridden to a neighboring ranch to help with their harvest, the mutual aid that had replaced McBride's economic stranglehold. Emma sat with Sam on the porch, watching the stars emerge. "When do you leave for school?" Sam asked. 2 weeks. Nervous. Excited. Emma corrected. "I'll be studying with girls from all over the territory, learning to be a proper teacher, not just someone helping out." "You're already a teacher," Sam said. "School will just give you the papers to prove it." A rider approached Adelaide, despite the late hour. "Couldn't sleep," she explained, joining them on the porch. "Kept thinking about that scared girl who stood up in church and said, 'I'm too young to be a wife.' Look at you now." "I had help," Emma reminded her. "We all helped each other," Adelaide corrected. "That's what McBride never understood. He thought fear was stronger than community. He was wrong." They sat together as the night deepened. 3 unlikely allies who'd become family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: Emma's testimony at McBride's trial, her departure for school, the ongoing work of rebuilding a community's trust. But tonight, they simply existed in the peace they'd fought to create. As Emma finally retired to what had been the tack room but was now her proper bedroom, she looked at the journal Sam had given her. She opened it to the first page and began to write. "My name is Emma Watson. I am 15 years old. A year ago, I was nearly sold into marriage to pay my father's debts. I ran instead, finding sanctuary with a grieving rancher named Sam Morgan. This is the story of how one act of refusal became a revolution, how a community remembered its conscience, and how I learned that being too young to be a wife meant I was exactly the right age to find my voice and help others find theirs." She set down the pen, looking out her window at the vast Texas sky. The same stars that had witnessed her desperate flight now watched over her chosen future. In 2 weeks, she would board a stage for the territorial capital and the normal school. In 4 years, she would return as a certified teacher. In 10 years, she would establish 3 schools for girls across the county. In 20 years, she would see her first students become teachers themselves. But all of that was the future. Tonight, Emma Watson, ward of Sam Morgan, student of Adelaide Palmer, teacher of forgotten girls, survivor and voice of change, simply closed her journal and prepared for sleep, surrounded by the safety of chosen family and earned peace. The oil lamp flickered one last time before she turned it down. That same promise of sanctuary that had greeted her a year ago now extending to every girl who would follow in her footsteps, learning that they too were too young to be wives, but never too young to be heard. You know, friend, as I close Emma's story, I find myself thinking about the bridges we build when we're not even trying to. Sam Morgan wasn't looking to save anyone. He was just a broken man offering water to a thirsty child. Emma wasn't trying to start a revolution. She was just a frightened girl who finally said no. But sometimes that's how the strongest families are born. Not from blood, but from choosing to stand together when standing alone would be easier. I've learned something from watching Emma find her voice and Sam find his purpose again. Real gratitude isn't just saying thank you, it's becoming the shelter someone else needs. The way Sam became Emma's sanctuary and she became his reason to fight again. Family isn't about who you're born to, but who shows up when you're collapsed by a well with nowhere to run. Every one of us has been Emma at some point, desperate and alone. And every one of us has the chance to be Sam, offering dignity to someone who's forgotten they deserve it. That's the bridge between gratitude and family, when thankfulness becomes action, when receiving help teaches us to give it. That's all any of us can do. Really, build bridges, one choice at a time.